Hey guys, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. How are you doing?
I'm good.
If-
Hello to the people in the live. I'm here today with Anthony and Brian from Gong, and they will be sharing all of their expertise about working with like a huge company that's got so many eyes on it right now, from two different perspectives. We have an SDR perspective and an AE perspective. So I would love, like, Anthony, could you start us off by introducing yourself and say a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amber, and happy Friday, everyone. So my name's Anthony Banayote. I'm an ISR here at Gong. For those that don't know, that is an inside sales representative, and I work on our strategic accounts, selling up market to companies over 10,000 plus employees. So it's really fun for me just trying to penetrate into a lot of these new markets and new logos of the business. And then just a little bit outside of work, I'm a wannabe golfer and I live an active lifestyle, like training for a half marathon right now. So looking forward to that in November and love spending time with family and friends.
That's awesome. I'm horrible at golf, so I can't actually be there, but hoping you get better. To introduce myself, my name's LaManna. I'm a commercial account executive here at Gong. I joined last August, so been here just a little over a year now. In my role here, it's pretty much full cycle in terms of sales. So we generate a lot of pipeline ourselves via self-sourcing, and then are really responsible from everything from demo all the way through close as well. And then our commercial segment in particular is typically around 250 employees and under. And a little bit about me, I definitely live for intramural sports, so intramural volleyball, intramural football. I'm always game.
Love that.
Awesome. So, basically, how the format works, and y'all already know, is that people will be dropping their questions in the chat, and then you can just answer them however you want, like whoever feels like they have the most experience. And so, to the people in the chat, like, just drop your questions whenever you have them. I'm going to start you guys off with one though. We would like to know, how do you stay resilient as a seller?
Yeah, I can take the first. I think first thing to call out is it's not easy for any of us in SDR, AE roles, customer success as well. There's a lot of highs and lows to sales. I still remember I lived at home my very first year as an SDR with my dad, and he used to try to guess just based off my reaction when I got home if I booked a meeting that day or if I didn't, because he could just instantly tell. So it's really challenging. And I think part of it comes with experience, but also just having the discipline in terms of like your day-to-day operating rhythm of focusing more on like consistent inputs than always the like end results, especially as an AE. If I only celebrated every time I closed a deal, right, it would only happen once or twice a month. So really trying to celebrate like all the little wins along the way. If you run a great demo, if they respond to an email, anything like that, to just like compile and stack up the wins a little bit.
Yeah, similar to what Brian said, I kind of look at it as, just enjoying the journey. And one of our operating principles at Gong is like favoring the long term and enjoying the ride. So knowing that sales is not easy off the bat and then trying to just detach yourself from the outcome a little bit. I like how you said, Brian, like if you're not celebrating like every win, like knowing that when you fail, it's always a learning lesson that can come from it. So you can take that and then just constantly apply your failures to constantly improve and get better. And I think that's one of the most important things about sales is just learning from your mistakes and losses and then being able to reciprocate that into wins and translate it. And then I think too, just having fun with it. You have a bad cold call, you shake it off, you slack one of your friends or coworkers and just, like, can you believe that guy? Like, he was just yelling at me on the phone. Like, you got to enjoy some of the little things about it.
I will read off this first question. So, first question is, as Gong starts to go after marketers, in addition to sales, what have been your highest converting CTAs on cold calls with marketers? It's a really great question. And I think for a lot of businesses, especially like now more than ever, it's critical to have multiple personas you're targeting and just get wider in your accounts, whether you're already in cycle or even just from an outreach perspective like this. So I really like it. I think in general, like, it's really critical to identify just first and foremost what is going to resonate with that persona. Like, what about your solution can like truly help that individual from a day-to-day perspective? So in terms of like CTAs on cold calls, we actually take a pretty soft approach sometimes, in which we'll just try to ask a couple of questions and then ask in return, like, hey, did anything of what I shared about Gong resonate with you? And then they
Yeah.
say something, it's like, why that piece, right? Can you elaborate? And then you can kind of go into your pitch. But I think having a little bit of a softer approach has worked really well, from some marketers who genuinely want to learn a little bit more about Gong before, committing to 30 minutes or 45 minutes next week. Anthony, what would you add to that?
I'd say the same, like having those light CTAs, but then I enjoy sharing some content, specifically maybe targeted more towards like a marketing persona. So whether it be having like more visibility and insights into the voice of the customer, or generating words that sell. I think sharing some videos as well from just our own material, or just even me as an SDR, just kind of recording, what a demo of Gong would look like. And it's like, hey, like this is how someone in marketing would be able to live inside of Gong. And I like those questions of asking, like you mentioned, just as like, hey, does this resonate with like your current processes versus just like throwing it in and having to go after them. What are your favorite ways to use UserGems? So how I have it set up is anytime that a person or a prospect from a company that was using Gong, I have it set up to get an email into my inbox. So then I have like a nice list of all the people that switched over to a new company. From there, I'll go check them out on LinkedIn. And then I worked with our marketing department actually to create templates that I can use within Outreach. And then sometimes like the subject line will be Brian from UserGems to Gong, or something catchy like that. I like to include their old company name, so that way it like kind of catches their eyesight in the inbox. And then just being able to talk about like, hey, were you a champion? Were you a power user? What was your use case when you used Gong at your last company?
Yeah, I love that. Probably pretty similar approach from my aspect as more of an AE, but just didn't love the question. I think I start just tactically, like when I get that email from UserGems alerting me that like I have a champion that has used Gong before joining one of my accounts. I'm gonna get excited about it. When I do have a moment, I'm gonna quickly throw them into LinkedIn, and then I often hit them with an email. Pretty similar. My subject line is always like your time at Gong or your time at blank. Gets a really high open rate from being that previous company. And my strategy in that email is actually to have it be really light and pretty concise. So typically the framework will just be like, hey, Anthony, like, saw you just recently joined Gong coming from blank, an ex-customer, 3 months in. How's it going so far? Given your familiarity with us, I'll spare you the entire pitch. Would it be worth a chat? Would love to share a few ideas. So I think just keeping it like really soft and like a little bit of personalization, but also acknowledging that like you don't need to pitch them the whole thing if they've used it before. Like just try to see if they're open to a conversation and kind of play it from there.
100%. I think too, like you said, it's important to not necessarily go for the meeting. Like you're building a relationship with this person since they already had experience using Gong. Like you just want to continue to further develop that and grow it.
This next question is a follow-up to the one about marketing CTAs.
Yeah. So how does this compare with CTAs with sales leaders? So I think Courtney, something I've done with some of my like outreach for marketers is I try to put some CTAs in there that like might resonate with them from like a first email. So one I've tried recently is like, would you be open if I sent you a case study that reminded me of blank company, knowing that marketers have to work on things like case studies, or that type of material. Sales leaders, what I found with that is I still do a really light CTA. I don't ask like, hey, would you be open to a demo for an hour on these 3 dates? I keep it pretty light because I think sales leaders in general, like they know what you're after. They've had to do the role before. They have folks that are in your position as well. So I actually stick to a pretty short one, just like, hey, would you be open to learning more? Would you be against seeing the platform? Just like really light kind of verbiage on that.
Yeah. I think it kind of goes both ways for maybe the persona that you're going after. Sometimes, at least when I'm selling into some of these bigger enterprise accounts, and it's maybe a VP of sales or a CRO, I like to kind of challenge them a little bit and create a little bit of that friction to try and generate a response. So what that looks like for me is I spend a lot of the time sifting through a 10K or annual like news reports from companies, and then showing that I actually took the time to do the research, and then trying to build some credibility with that versus just like all the other SDRs that might be flooding their inbox. And it's like, oh, Anthony took his time to understand some of the pains that we might be experiencing as a business right now, and then not necessarily plug Gong like right away, but just talking about, I think I do have some ideas that work with some other sales leaders I've spoken with around how our solution can solve for X. So just trying to, like you said, Brian, keep it a light ask, but also generate a little bit of friction for them. If you don't book a demo on call one, what's your follow-up strategy to keep them engaged and open to a second conversation? I think, at least for me, sometimes I might ask them, towards the end of the call, like, hey, it sounds like I missed the mark, and kind of fall on my sword, like a swing and a miss per se. It's like, you obviously have more experience than me. Do you mind maybe sharing some insights on what went wrong? Like, did I completely miss your persona or the business pain that you're feeling right now? And then usually we'll just go back, do some digging, try to break down the call with my manager or my account exec, and then do some more research on them, and then try to deliver a more relevant within my next outreach. But definitely don't get discouraged on it. It's not every call that you're getting a demo on the first one.
Yeah, I love that approach. I might change a little bit from my like AE aspect. So if I don't successfully land a cold call, I actually have a template I made in Outreach that I'll just quickly shoot off called cold call dash just spoke Gong. And it's basically just like, hey, thanks for, hearing my absolute best pitch. If you want to watch a short video, check it out here. Like, let me know if you'd ever be open to learning more. So I try to just get like an immediate touch off just in case, like, maybe they realize that they are interested and I just was calling them at a bad time. And then more tactically, in terms of like keeping them engaged, I actually decide at that exact moment, like when would be the time to follow up with them. So if they shared like, hey, Brian, just not now, like 2023 is better, I'll just go ahead and immediately make a task, either an outreach, or I'll put a reminder in my Google Calendar for like, hey, call them back December 15th, right? We're not going to actually wait till 2023, but I want to get a little bit closer. And I figure that like deciding right then and there is probably the best approach versus like a week or two later when, I likewise don't remember that call. So just kind of keeping organized helps me.
Yeah. Big on the follow-up task. Jake. All right. Go for it, Brian.
Awesome. Great question from Jake here. Jake, appreciate you being here as well. For both of you guys, how do you think LinkedIn has helped you improve or advance in your respective careers? Not necessarily in terms of social selling, but soft or hard skills it's helped you develop. It's a really great question. Both Anthony and I are decently active on LinkedIn. I think Anthony was recently named actually a top 25 SDR to follow by demand base, so he might give an even better answer. But I think for me, with having followed like different people that I've looked up to in sales on LinkedIn, from Gong, people like Chris Orlob and Sarah Brazier and people like that, and other folks at other companies as well. Candidly, I think the biggest advancement in terms of my career has just been like learning from like some of their posts. I think there's a lot of really good like actionable tactical advice out there. If nothing else, sometimes they're just like really, really good reminders that like keep things fresh with me. So I just go through and I spend a couple minutes, if not more each day, just kind of reading through my feed and trying to interact as well. It hasn't helped in much of terms of like generating pipeline or people reaching out, asking to buy. And we have pretty defined territories anyways, but really just like continuing to build connections and like learn from others that like have a different perspective because of who they sell into or their market on like what's working and what's not.
Yeah, I love that, Brian. I think LinkedIn for me has been one of like my favorite tools and platforms to leverage for a number of reasons. One, like it helps building your personal brand. Yes, I was named the top 25 SDR, but that doesn't mean that I have prospects knocking on my door asking for business. You're still having to do the hard work. So some of the key takeaways that LinkedIn has really helped me besides growing my personal brand, I think improving my copywriting skills. So I try to consistently post. For a while, I was trying to do day to day, but I just found it to be a little too draining. So now when I'm posting, I try to have a process of 20 minutes. So 10 minutes to write, 10 minutes to evaluate, and then just click post after that. And the whole goal when I'm posting is to just hope that I can help one person by providing some valuable insights that maybe I've experienced or things that I'm seeing as a seller. I think early on when I started my sales career, like I was seeing a lot of different people share some of their wins, not always as much of their failures. So I like to talk about some of my failures sometimes, just because I think, with social media, it can be a rose colored lens. It's like all the good stuff, but it's like, like I said earlier, you learn from the failures. And then most recently for me, it helped a lot with just networking. I know Brian and I are both in remote roles, so I've connected with a lot of great people that I've been able to learn from. And most recently with my friend Sydney over at Chili Piper, her and I started a podcast together. So it's a cool journey. And I think that a lot of people can leverage LinkedIn for a number of different ways.
I'm just popping in because we're over 15 minutes now and you guys are doing great. So I'm just going to continue to send more questions, but I'm also dropping Anthony's podcast in the comments.
All right, from Steven, aside from marketing's efforts, do either of you personally have a strategy around warming up target accounts in the months prior to your initial outreach? If so, what does that look like? That's a tough question. It's really good. I think for me, and I know Brian might have a little different approach. I like to, like I said, I go heavy on the research. So working with my account exec, planning a strategy around that. And then we use Zendoso. So sometimes I have to get crafty and send some different personalized gifts. I don't send them though at like the start of my cadence and sequencing. Like I like to save it more towards the middle and end when a prospect might be going a little dark. But I think just having some research and relevancy for why you're going to start reaching out to them, knowing the pain that they're experiencing as a business, and then having some case studies that you can probably share with it. Maybe like your first outreach is a lighter ask of just wanting to share a case study.
Yeah, I great answer. And I absolutely love this question, Steven. I'm a huge proponent of this in general, especially for account executives that might not be held to like quite a firm, like monthly op generation. Like you can play the long game a little bit with some of your accounts, especially if, they're using a competitor or just, truly aren't a fit for whatever reason for 3 or 6 months. And like prospects where you play the long game with and try to add value for them first, like they remember that when the timing is right. And I've seen it happen over and over. One example, like Anthony mentioned, is like sending something. If you use something like Sendoso, great platform. You can shoot over something even just via Amazon as well. I found out the CRO was using our biggest competitor. Their renewal wasn't till December, but I found out from his Twitter he was a big golfer. So I sent him 3 Gong branded golf balls. Took a little bit of effort with marketing, but they arrived. He responded, and I was super excited about it and said he'd check us out later that year. Similarly, like looking at anything like no ask that you can send or email over. Something I've heard more recently that's worked really well for other folks is like sales leaders are constantly hiring, and that's usually one of their biggest focuses. Odds are you might know somebody in your network that's looking for an AE position or an SDR position. Shoot a CRO or VP of sales a note that you have a potential candidate for them and make an introduction to your company at the same time, and wait a month or two before asking for anything in return. So just playing the long game like that, especially with like more of your like strategic accounts, or if there's like a critical event where like it's just not a good opportunity till a certain date, like pays such a huge dividend. And awesome question as well. Justine, keeping it light, what are your favorite things to do when you're not working? This is a great question. For me, I really like anything like athletic related or getting outdoors, things of that nature. Even just during the day, I try to go for a couple walks to keep things light, throwing my headphones, working out, intramural sports as well. And then on the weekends, just taking advantage of it to hang out with friends, significant other, family as well. Just trying to capitalize on it with other people. Anthony,
Yeah. Pretty similar to you, Brian. Like I said, active lifestyle of like camping, hiking, whatever it is, going to the gym. I really enjoy listening to podcasts and then reading some books. Most taking my dog out for a walk. I'd say most recently, there's this new like German brewery that opened up in where I'm from. So my friends and I went and checked that out. Also a big euchre fan for any Midwest folks. If you know that card game, it's a great game.
I'm a huge euchre fan as well. I didn't know that about you. We'll have to
Yeah.
organize a game. I'm in Chicago, by the way, and then Anthony's out of Indiana right now.
Yep. AJ. Oh, Brian, take it.
Great question, AJ. For Brian, when are you gonna become CRO? Not of Gong, not at Gong anytime soon. I'll leave it at that. But I'll turn your question into a different one. That I think it is important to have like a North Star if you do aspire to be at a higher position or want to build something or do something to kind of keep grounded in that. Like, don't be afraid to tell people as well. I've definitely shared with AJ, who works with me at Gong, that someday I want to be a CRO, and just trying to hold myself accountable to goals that I'll have, we'll say 10 to 15 years out.
There we go. What's your favorite follow-up approach when an interested prospect ghosts? Right now, a lot of prospects are indecisive versus choosing yes, no competitor. What tactics are you using to get prospects to move back into the decision mode? I love that question, Steven, and definitely am experiencing that as well. I try to at least just mix up my approach. So sometimes versus just like email and calling, I'll send maybe a personalized video that I record, talking just a little bit about it. One tip that I saw Zoe shared on LinkedIn, if like you have someone opening a lot of your emails and then for a while they go dark on you, I like to call them, leave them a voicemail, tell them not to call me back. And it's like, hey, I'll send you over a video message. And from there, it seems like there might be some good conversations happening at XYZ company around solving for X. Want to be a part of those. But I think just especially if they generated some interest, kind of challenging them per se. And it's like, it seemed like this was a concern when we last spoke a month ago. What changed between now and then? Just trying to get some type of response from the prospect. It's ultimately the goal for me at the end of the day. Curious to hear what you have to say though, Brian.
Yeah, I'll answer it from a deal perspective. And Steven, this is still happening from the deal perspective as well, unfortunately as well. But I think my approach, if they've gone dark on me a little bit, is some combination of like mixing it up, as Anthony mentioned, like a video message or some light humor, but then getting back to the value of like what we've already identified and like why it would make sense for that prospect to get back on a call with me. So like what that could sound like in October as an example. I've been using like a, spooky dash their name as the subject line and be like, hey, Anthony, usually ghosts don't happen until Halloween in late October. Seems like we might have one early here. All jokes aside, I know when we last spoke in August, you mentioned X, Y, and Z were top priorities. We have a new area in the platform that I think would really resonate with you around that, like open to finding some time next week. So just try to make it about them as much as possible and try to stand out from the noise. Like while it's our number one priority to get them back on board, like I guarantee you they didn't wake up that morning thinking about you or that they don't have a next meeting on the book. So just like continue to frame it and make it about them as much as possible.
I'm going to have to borrow that spooky approach, Brian. I'll add on one more thing that I most recently had to, and it was funny. I actually never contacted or had a conversation with this CRO, but I sent him multiple emails, voicemails, and he opened all my emails. So I feel like I was trying like close to hitting the mark. I sent him a cocktail kit from Zendoso, and then it was funny in my messaging. I was like, you're probably wondering, a cocktail kit? Being a CRO is undoubtedly rewarding position, but it's also full of ups and downs. Cocktails have one of two purposes: celebrating your wins or drowning your sorrows. We want to help you celebrate some more wins here. And he responded back to me on a Saturday. I was so excited, got the notification, and he's like, you really stood out through the noise. let's have a conversation. So I think anything like you can just try to break through the noise of that and drive that true value that you know that you can generate is what's going to help.
It's a really cool example. This one is, what's a recent win that you're super proud of, either professionally or personally? It's a good question. Anthony, do you have anything that jump out to you?
I mean, professionally, I was really happy when I booked that CRO. That was within my first month here at Gong. So that was the first meeting that got me to my quota. So I was pumped about that. Personally, like I said, I'm training for a half marathon that's a month out right now. So I'm feeling really good about my training plan. I got a 12-mile run coming up later today after work. So I'm excited for that.
That's amazing. Good luck with that. I think I had a deal recently that was exciting. I think a lot of the time I love quick wins, which I feel like UserGems helps me with, especially for like building quick pipeline, closing it quickly. But like at the same time, sometimes the most rewarding ones are the ones that are like super hard, long fought, competitive battles as well, where they just, pressure test you at every component throughout your sales process, and you have your own doubt about yourself and if you're going to win the deal and so on and so forth. So always exciting to see those come through and hit the mark. But hopefully my goal short term is definitely President's Club, and I'm sure it's similar for Anthony. So hopefully can circle back on that question in 4 months.
Definitely. Have you worked together on a deal? If yes, would love to hear about your favorite win. Any tips for SDR AE duos out there? So sadly, no, Brian and I have not worked together on any deals. Definitely will be leaning on Brian though for some knowledge. He gave a killer presentation to our company yesterday. So he's full of great knowledge. I think though, speaking to like the SDR AE duo, it's important to share some of that vulnerability that you might be feeling as an SDR. I think a lot of the time we can try and get caught up in, we're not doing success, or they're like, you're putting in the work, but the meetings aren't coming. And I think just being that vulnerability and trying to work through that with your AE, because they might notice something that's like, hey, Anthony, you're doing killer job on your outreach messaging. Just keep sticking to it. I think that's important to have. And I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Brian.
I would kill to be working with you on some of these, but I think really tactically, some advice I have for duos is like, as an SDR, don't be afraid to loop your AE in like early into the outreach. Like even if it's a demo request, like loop in that AE who would ultimately take it. If they don't respond to the demo request, like instead of like Anthony sending another note, like the AE can send a short one, like, hey, just wanted to like propose a couple extra times here. Just sometimes an extra voice can help, or like a little bit of a tag team. So don't be afraid to plug them in early, CC it. I mean, it's, there's enough emails in the inbox, one more doesn't matter, and work together as a team.
Definitely.
Okay, I've got one more question for y'all.
Do you have any book recommendations or podcast? Besides my own podcast, the Happily Ambitious podcast, my favorite one for like a professional setting and kind of also like outside of work, it's called All In. It's by David Friedberg, David Sachs, Chamath Palihapitiya, and Jason Calacanis. They're 4 well-known like investors and founders that worked at some of the biggest companies that you all know. It's a great just having an understanding from a SaaS understanding, sales, marketing, politics, economy, everything. They cover everything in a fun way. And then I'm currently reading The Defining Decade, Why Your 20s Matter. It's a really insightful book that I'm enjoying right now.
For me, and I'll be jotting those down as well, Atomic Habits is a phenomenal book. If you have not read it, read it. I'll leave it at that. It definitely changed my life. So would highly recommend it.
Awesome. How do you guys feel? You did a great job.
Yeah, that was fun. Are we still live?
We are still live. So I was going to give you one more chance to talk about your podcast or anything else that you have going on. So like if you want to promote yourself, go for it here, and then we'll end on a good goodbye.
Awesome. You want to go for it, Brian?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say appreciate everyone, anyone who's still on, taking 30 minutes out of their Friday. I know everyone has competing priorities, and hopefully there's a good investment in your own self-development. But Nothing too much to promote. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, would love to, and feel free to shoot me a message as well. Always love helping people in any way possible.
Yeah, same here. Happy to help however I can. So shoot me a message on LinkedIn. If I'm slow to respond, give me time. I'm sorry. And then check out Happily Ambitious podcast. My friend Sydney and I started it for folks that are looking to break into sales, have a better understanding of SaaS from a sales and marketing perspective. But also, one of the areas that we think kind of gets overlooked is having to deal with like the mental health side of sales. So juggling imposter syndrome and going from having to complete day-to-day tasks without just stopping to enjoy life a little bit. So check that out and check out Gong and UserGems. And thanks for sharing some time with us on Friday.
Yeah, thanks guys. All right, bye.
Awesome.
See ya.
Bye.